which a friend of hers, Elise Matheson, actually printed off. She liked it so much and took it to Harriet and said, "You need to read this." And Harriet read it and said, "Ooh, he is an author," right? Because I mentioned that I'd become a novelist because of Robert Jordan in part. And she called Tom Doherty and said, "Who's this guy?" And he said, "Oh, he's one of our authors. He's an up and comer." And she said, "Send me his books." And so she got my books. She then called me on the phone out of the blue, unexpectedly. You guys have no idea what it was like to get this phone call, okay? It was a voicemail because I was, time difference and author, sleep in, okay? This is what I do. So I stumble out of bed at noon and go downstairs. And I listen to my voicemail. I always listen to my voicemail, one of the first things I do, because, who knows if, my publisher's on fire or something, I don't know, or, "Oh, we just found out you accidentally insulted Madonna in one of your books and she's suing us," I don't know. Whatever happens, you want to find out if there are any fires. And so I listen, and I'm groggy, and the first message is, "Hello, Brandon Sanderson. This is Harriet McDougall Rigney. I am Robert Jordan's widow. I'd like you to call me back. There's something I want to discuss with you." And this very refined, Harriet has a very refined but kindly at the same time voice. It's like, imagine if your grandmother were this wonderful Southern belle, and that's Harriet, all right? And so I'm like, what? And so I called her back, but she had gone out at that point, so so the suspense continues. I called my editor and he did not answer. I called my agent and he did not answer. So then I went up to my wife and started stuttering and walking around in circles. My wife seriously, she jokes that I was more nervous that day than I was on our wedding day. To which I respond, I had many months to get ready for the wedding day. This fell on me like a ton of bricks, and it really did. I called Harriet back, eventually got a hold of her, and she said, "I was just wondering if you would be interested in completing the Wheel of Time." Yeah, just like that. And my response was to stutter incoherently like an idiot. No, really, I wrote her an email the next day that said, "Dear Harriet, I promise I'm not an idiot, and I can put two words together." It was really shocking. Even after getting a call from the morning, I assumed, "Oh, it can't be that. It can't be that." She said, "Well, that was just a find-out call. She wanted to know if I was interested before she spent the time investigating my works as an author." She spent the next month reading my books. She read Mistborn, The Final Empire, and then she called me back and said, "Yes, I want you to do this." I actually knew, she said, by chapter 2, which editors are really good at snap judgments. They have to learn to do that, I guess, but she said she knew by chapter 2 that I was the one that she wanted to finish the book. And so that's how it happened. I didn't apply for this. I was well known as a large fan of the Wheel of Time, and I think that had something to do with it, because if you're going to write the 12th book in a series of this scope and magnitude, you need to have read the other books. And I had read Eye of the World 8 times by that point, and so I was fairly familiar with it. That said, I'm kind of a forgetful person, so I always worry that I'm spelling people's names wrong. But yeah. The last little part of this story is actually the why I said yes. It's probably obvious why I said yes. When she called me that first time, I said yes, but it was a hesitant yes. It was a, what am I getting into? Yes. It was so daunting, in part because I knew that no one could replace Robert Jordan, and I still believe that. In fact, I have said straightforwardly to people that this is not as good a book as Robert Jordan could have written, because it is impossible for someone to write the book that Robert Jordan would have written, and he should be here to write it. By the way, now might be a good time to silence your cell phones. So that when I do the reading, we don't have a musical accompaniment. I know you're very embarrassed. I'm sorry. I don't mean to embarrass you further. But I spent that first night after Harriet had called. I spent it thinking about this series and about what it had meant to me and what I was taking on by saying yes. And part of the reason I sent that email to Harriet the next day was because I wanted to convince her I wasn't a fool. But part of it was because I had actually made the decision. Even though I'd said yes then, I made the decision overnight. And what I realized was, no one can replace Robert Jordan. It is impossible. But if I say no to this, who knows who it's going to end up with? And I realized that night that if Robert Jordan couldn't write this book, A Memory of Light, that I wanted to do it because at least then I know that someone who cared about it would be writing the book. That it wouldn't go to who knows, to some author who is looking for a paycheck and who, probably would have done an okay job, but who had not grown up with these characters as their best friends, and who had not read the books numerous times, who had not followed online all the Asmodean discussions, who had not spent his first day on the internet somehow in rec, art, alt, whatever that Usenet group was for Robert Jordan. And that's actually what I did. I said, people are talking about the Wheel of Time? Ooh! I realized that I needed to do this because if I said no and someone else screwed it up, it would be partially my fault. That was a big responsibility because by saying yes, if I screwed it up, it would be even more my fault. But I hope that I have not screwed it up. In fact, I have tried my very best to write this book as I feel he would have. I can't replace him, and I'm not imitating his voice, but I'm trying very hard to make the characters still be the characters and the story still be the story, so that when you read this book, you do not see me. You see Matt and Perrin and Rand and Egwene and Nynaeve and Cadsuane and everybody else who you've been reading for so many years. And that's the answer of how it happened. I'm just going to read 2 pages to you because we really don't have a lot of time. But I think these are the 2 pages to read if you're going to hear anything out of the Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the Third Age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose around the alabaster spire known as the White Tower. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the Wheel of Time, but it was a beginning. The wind twisted around the magnificent tower, brushing perfectly fitted stones and flapping majestic banners. The structure was somehow both graceful and powerful at the same time, a metaphor perhaps for those who had inhabited it